Shortages, political crises, and brutal inflation are things we used to watch happening on the television to other people in other places. Now they're happening to us. How come? I remember well the day in March 2020 when we were sitting around in the office and a mate passed around a photo his wife had just sent him. It was of the toilet paper section in one of the local supermarkets. And we all saw something on that photo that we'd never seen before. An entire supermarket aisle empty. We all sat there stunned. We couldn't believe it. Supermarkets running out of things? In Australia? Impossible. Of course, we got used to it and we've stayed used to it. It's pretty common now for most stores in Australia to have gaps on the shelves. We've got supply chain problems in medications, foodstuffs, everyday grocery items, you name it. It's hit or miss whether what you want is going to be available at all, and we've all learned to be flexible and to stock up. Last Christmas, though, we went on holiday to Malaysia. We took the boys to Legoland and went around the sites. And we spent a good month there, and we were hanging out in all the places where the locals go, not just the high-end places for the foreigners. And everywhere we went, one thing struck me most. No shortages. The shops were stuffed. Not only that, but the variety of groceries available on the outskirts of town were as good as what we used to get here in Australia. I could even get New Zealand cheese and Irish butter. Like, who's the developing country here? And it turns out that while inflation is global, shortages are mainly a Western problem. You know, the part of the world controlled by the oligarchy who thinks that soon we'll own nothing and we'll be happy about it. The Great Reset nonsense isn't being imposed outside the West. Non-Western countries are choosing to align with the BRICS vision of a multilateral economic order that enriches their people, rather than the morbid Western vision of rainbow communism and bug meat burgers. Now, it's taking us a while to get our heads around it, but what we're seeing in the world today is an economic and political crisis inside the Western world. It's not Russia, North Korea, or Venezuela collapsing this time. It's us. We've not seen that in our lifetimes. In fact, it hasn't happened for centuries. Once people inside the West realize that we're not going back to the good old days of easy debt-based prosperity, they're going to freak out. And they're going to get really, really angry. Now, you might think I'm over-egging the omelette, that this is just a brief hiccup while we wait to deal with that madman Putin and his expansionist wars in Europe, that the good times will boom again. But this isn't 1939, friend. Back then, we had the gold, the guns, and the grit. Nowadays, we don't have any of those. In October 2022, UK PM Liz Truss lost her job after her high-spending budget proposals caused a crisis in the UK government debt markets. The Bank of England had to step in to prevent an economic meltdown and the collapse of the pensions. They didn't solve any of the underlying economic and financial problems, though. They just printed more money to kick the can down the road. Now, that's not supposed to happen in the UK. This is Britain, England, what used to be the centre of the financial world. The sun never sets and all that jazz. Now, they're on the brink of financial meltdown because their entire government is broke. The crisis is everywhere once you know to look. Despite what the media is telling us, the war in Ukraine is also not going well for NATO. Russia is mobilizing and equipping its forces at a rapid rate with modern armaments, while Western countries are rapidly depleting their stockpiles of weapons and ammunition. Although US military technology is second to none, that doesn't matter if you can't make enough missiles and tanks to fight. Now, according to the Pentagon, America's ability to respond if a war breaks out in another theater, for example Korea or Taiwan, is severely compromised. Restocking armaments will take decades because the globalists have so hollowed out America's industrial base. America was once the arsenal of democracy. Now, it can barely make 2,000 artillery shells a month. Ukraine uses double that in a day. On top of the economic and military crises, America is facing a growing global political crisis. There was a time when the US dominated international politics without even flexing. Those days are over. The recent revelations that it was the US which blew up Germany's Nord Stream pipelines are not an indication of strength. They're a sign of weakness when a great power has to commit such an outrage just to get their way. So then, what is the cause behind this great mega crisis of Western civilization, or more precisely, the American empire which runs it? Why is it that suddenly the West, which seemed invincible 20 years ago, is collapsing? Debt. That's why our governments are becoming so tyrannical and so criminal. It's why the oligarchy who control the politicians is proposing this ridiculous great reset. They're not strong, they're desperate. It's why we're having our standard of living destroyed in the names of sustainability and saving the climate. It's why the West is picking a fight, maybe a nuclear one, with Russia. It's why I can't find chicken thighs at the deli this week. It's all about the debt. The debt-based Western monetary order, which has provided the illusion of stable and enormous wealth globally for decades, is collapsing. US dollar debt globally is now well over $100 trillion, much of it held by investors and bankers outside the United States. As central banks keep raising interest rates, this causes pressure not just on the cost of servicing the debts, but it also reduces the book value of assets that large financial entities use as collateral in this global casino economy. Imagine you're at a casino and you're doubling down, and at the same time, the credit card that you're using to borrow the money to sit down at the table is increasing its interest rates by the minute. That's the situation that we're in. Now, many of us remember 2008 and the global financial crisis. That was the first indication to the public that our economic system is destined to collapse one day. Central banks created trillions of dollars to reflate the system. The music continued, and we all kept dancing around the chairs. The music almost stopped again in September 2019 with something known as the repo market crisis, which didn't get as much press, but was even more dangerous. And the tens of trillions of dollars created by central banks in response to the pandemic 6 months later conveniently kicked the can down the road again. What a coincidence. But we've run out of road. Red lights are flashing in the global financial system again. I'll put some links down the video, underneath the video, so you can see what I'm talking about there. And we can expect the elites to respond with another crisis to cover up the reality of their debt-based system crashing down. What do you think they'll do? Let me know in the comments. Whatever it is, it's going to have to be even bigger than COVID.